When I first met Debbie, I thought I had found someone who shared the same values, dreams, and ambitions as me. We were both at the start of our professional careers, me as an architect, and Debbie climbing the ladder in corporate finance. Our days were filled with long work hours, and our evenings were often spent dreaming about the future, building a life together. As we grew closer, it became clear that we complemented each other in ways that made me feel lucky and fulfilled. We were both young, determined, and ambitious, and those early days felt like we were building something unbreakable. As the years passed, we continued to grow both personally and professionally. We bought a house, spent vacations planning trips we'd never take, and even started talking about expanding our family. Houston, where we eventually settled, became our shared haven. Moving there was like starting fresh in a city brimming with opportunities. It wasn't always smooth sailing, but with each challenge, I thought we were reinforcing the foundation of our relationship. It was the sort of marriage that felt strong until subtle cracks began to appear. I remember the early days after we moved to Houston vividly. The city was sprawling and vibrant, filled with an energy that made every corner seem alive. Though we hardly knew anyone at first, it didn't take long for us to adapt to the fast pace of our new lives. Adjusting to my demanding role as an architect and accommodating Debbie's frequent business trips kept us busy, but the satisfaction of building a life together made it worthwhile. Most of our weekends were spent exploring the various neighborhoods, soaking in the culture, and meeting new people. That's how we crossed paths with Jenny and Trev. They quickly became a significant part of our lives, joining us for dinners and weekend outings, and before we knew it, we found ourselves counting them among our closest friends. Over time, our friendship with Jenny and Trev deepened. We'd often spend hours at each other's houses after a long week, sharing casual dinners, watching movies, or just talking about life. We were all facing similar struggles, juggling careers, relationships, and the inevitable stresses of adult life. It felt great to have friends we could count on, even though both Debbie and Trev traveled frequently for work. The comfort of familiarity helped us cope with their absences, but as I would later learn, there were things happening beneath the surface that none of us saw coming. That Saturday afternoon, we had company, Jenny and her husband, Trev. Since moving to Houston, they had become some of our closest friends. Our weekends were usually spent together, going out for dinner, attending local events, or just hanging out at each other's homes after a movie or a walk. Both couples were at the same stage in life, college graduates in our early 30s, trying to balance student loans, growing careers, and for Trev and Debbie, frequent business trips. Deb was preparing for one of those trips, and Trev had just left our place for the airport to catch his flight to the West Coast, which was part of his work territory. This was our normal. They traveled, and we kept things going. Back home, Jenny and I worked as an accountant and an architect, respectively. Our travel was rare, if not occasional. Usually, only one spouse in each couple was on the road, and when that happened, the other spouse would join the remaining couple for dinner, or a weekend get-together. After Trev said goodbye and headed to the airport in a taxi, I let the women chat in the kitchen while I went out to the garage. I cleaned off my workbench and checked the security system we had invested in after a string of recent break-ins. Our setup included microphones and cameras in every room, all connected to a server in the attic. The system saved everything to the cloud when the motion sensors activated. I could check any room using the app on my phone or any computer I had access to. Out of habit, I checked to make sure everything was working. "How was your last trip?" Jenny asked my wife, Debbie, as they sat together at the kitchen table. "The usual," Debbie laughed. "Work, dinner, a bar, and then eventually some sleep." "Is it true what they say about people who avoid their families on business trips?" Jenny's concern for her husband was clear. Debbie paused for a moment before answering. "I wouldn't worry too much, Jen," she replied, taking a sip of her drink. "Trev always comes home to you, doesn't he?" "Yes, but I wonder what he does when he's alone." "If he's alone," Debbie reassured her, "he comes back to you. Don't focus on what happens when he's not there." "What do you mean, Deb?" Jenny asked. "Exactly what I said," Debbie replied. "What happens outside the house means nothing." I was stunned as her words echoed in my mind. What happens outside the house means nothing. What happens when people aren't home? It doesn't mean anything. Did she really just say that? "Debbie, what are you trying to say?" Jenny asked, clearly anxious. But by then, Debbie had retreated into a more reserved tone. "Nothing, Jen," she responded carefully. "Just that you're worrying for no reason. Trev loves you deeply. He comes home to you, and his trips are purely business, nothing more." It was obvious Jenny wasn't convinced by Debbie's response, but She allowed her to change the subject. I left them to their conversation for a while before returning to the kitchen to pour myself a cup of coffee. After hearing that, I wanted my mind to be clear. About 40 minutes later, Jenny said her goodbyes and drove home, and we settled in for the night. I was polite to my wife, but cautious. To say her words made me uneasy would be an understatement. As she went upstairs to take a shower, a flood of thoughts rushed through my mind. Had she cheated on me during her trips? Was this something she had done many times? Or was it just once, recently? The way she had said it was revealing. Her comment wasn't reflective or filled with regret. In fact, there was no fear or disapproval in her tone, just a simple statement of fact, accepting it as it is, without guilt. What should I do? What does any man do in this situation? Could I just talk to her about it? Was I really about to throw away 4 years of marriage? We had even talked about having kids. Had she slept with someone while traveling? How could I be sure a child would be mine? I started thinking about her usual business trips to Phoenix, San Diego, Seattle, and Omaha. Did she have a lover in each city, or just one person? Was he better looking than me? None of these thoughts made me feel anything but disappointment, anxiety, and sadness. The woman I loved had betrayed me. As much as I wanted to believe otherwise, the rational part of me knew the truth. Debbie, with just a slip of the tongue, had revealed her infidelity. I didn't sleep with her that night. She came downstairs to get me, but I pretended to be asleep on the sofa, my face buried in the pillows. She tried to wake me, but I stayed in a deep sleep, and she eventually gave up. I didn't turn to face her. I stayed in that position until I drifted into a restless sleep, until morning came. The first thing I noticed when I began to wake up was the smell of coffee and the sound of her sandals in the kitchen. I opened one eye and saw a cup of coffee on the table. Anxiety washed over me, and I didn't move or speak. I knew I was just delaying the inevitable. When I finally opened my eyes, Debbie was standing near the sofa, wearing only sandals and a robe. Her blonde hair draped over her right shoulder, and she looked at me thoughtfully. I stood up without touching the coffee. She gave me a worried look as I walked past her silently. I locked the bathroom door and started brushing my teeth. I heard creaking sounds from behind the door, signaling she was standing outside. But then they faded away. We didn't say a word to each other that morning, and I was relieved. I wasn't ready to talk. I wasn't scared to confront her either. In fact, I was almost looking forward to it. But first, I needed to know for sure. I needed facts. That's how I operate. I never take a step without knowing what's going on. Grabbing my laptop, I set up in the corner office of our living room. The desk faced the room, so I could work without her seeing my screen. Debbie walked back and forth between the bedroom and the kitchen, but she kept her distance. The silence between us made me angry. Why didn't she ask me what was wrong? Was this part of her game? After calming myself down, I focused on finding private investigators in the cities she traveled to. I filled out the necessary forms, wrote descriptions of what I needed, and used my personal credit card to hire 4 detective agencies to investigate. "Are you hungry?" she finally asked around 2 p.m. I had no interest in eating with her. "No," I replied, pretending to stay busy. She glanced at me from the kitchen, clearly trying to figure out what was wrong, but I refused to make eye contact. Any wife who had nothing to hide would be wondering why her husband had turned his back on her. Any wife who had nothing to worry about. "Maybe we could go out somewhere?" I suddenly said, standing up and grabbing my wallet, phone, and car keys. She looked surprised for a moment, then nodded and reached for her purse. Her phone was already in her hand. She always kept the same number, never let it out of her sight, and it was password protected. As we headed for the door, I let her walk out first, and I stared at her youthful, beautiful figure, a figure that, until last night, I thought belonged to me, just as much as my own body. We always took my car when we went out, so she moved to the passenger seat, waiting for me to open her door like I always did. Given everything that had happened, this was the last thing I wanted to do, but I forced myself. No matter what had gone down before she left on Tuesday, I needed to make sure she didn't suspect anything. I feared I might have already messed everything up. "Sorry about today," I said. "I think I made a mistake on the project and need to do some quick fixes and explanations when I come in on Monday." "About?" she replied, sounding relieved, but quickly caught herself and looked concerned. "Johnson's project." She asked about the house. "I finished that 3 weeks ago." So much for her paying attention during our conversations. "No," I corrected her. "Something for a future project. This week, I'll be working on new drawings and correcting my mistakes. Everything has to be perfect. I just hate making mistakes. You're too hard on yourself, she said more calmly once I gave her the expected explanation. Everyone makes mistakes, I almost said. That's for sure, but I held back. We talked about random small things and eventually about bills. Meanwhile, I was thinking about how I'd have to go to bed, knowing I couldn't get away with pretending to sleep on the couch again. When we got home, I took a shower and got into bed with my tablet, trying to read. But I just stared at the same page for 30 minutes while Debbie showered and then left the bathroom. She put on her robe, something she did when she was undressed underneath, signaling she wanted sex. We had sex. I remembered the last time we made love, the last time she was truly in love with me. She lay next to me in her robe, and I kept pretending to read. She placed her hand on my thigh and moved closer. "Are you mad at me?" she finally asked. I didn't respond immediately, but turned to study her face, looking for any sign. "I found your pills in the bathroom. You're taking them again." She froze at my comment. "Yes, I know," she said. "I'm really sorry. I thought we'd wait a few more months." I nodded, not wanting to make a big deal out of it. "No problem," I replied. "You're crazy," I added. But it wasn't concern. It was more like frustration. "No," I said. "I don't want a baby right now either." I didn't say, but I thought I did with you. She stayed quiet for a few moments, then moved her hand away as I lay still. After a few minutes, she turned over and turned off the light on her side. I listened to her breathing. I got up, took my tablet, and left the room. "Carson," I heard her say, but I closed the door and went back to the sofa. The next morning, when I woke up, she was already up and dressed. It was 6 a.m, time for my run. She was ready for work. "I made you coffee," she said. She looked like she wanted to say something else, but held back. She probably realized by then that I was upset. "When did you find out about the pills?" she asked. I wanted to say yesterday, but I didn't want her to think it was too recent. "Last week," I lied, no longer caring that I was lying to her. "And you didn't say anything? You didn't ask me what I thought about it?" I replied, "That's all No problem, Deb," I said. "If you don't want a child with me, then I don't want one either." She seemed like she wanted to respond, but I walked past her. "I'm late," I added. I needed my run. I needed the solitude to clear my head. Running had always helped me focus, starting in junior high, then high school, the Army, and later in college. Running always cured my distraction and self-doubt, both as a young man and as an adult. Now, as a married man, I was considering divorce. That evening, she came home and made dinner. Out of politeness, I sat with her and ate. I barely finished my meal, but I tried to be polite. "Can we talk about the baby when I get back from my trip?" she asked. "If you want," I replied. But all I could think about was what she had said to Jenny. What happens outside the home means nothing. The next morning, she was waiting for me to wake up. She was dressed for her trip, her bag and coat by the door. "Are you going to be okay while I'm gone?" she asked. "I'll survive," I answered. "I always do this, Carson," she said. "I love you." I nodded politely. She noticed the pain on my face, and I saw her wince. I think I heard a sob as she rushed out the door, leaving me staring after her as the car started and drove away. That day, I went to see a lawyer about getting a divorce. Since we had no children, all that remained was to divide the property we had accumulated since our marriage. However, infidelity could factor into the division of assets. We didn't have a prenuptial agreement, which in hindsight was a mistake. But if the detectives uncovered something useful, I could end up with most of it. The lawyers would battle it out in court, dragging the case for more fees. What a mess. Jenny had been texting and leaving voicemails, but I wasn't ready to talk yet. Maybe I'd stop by and see her later. But she beat me to it and showed up at my work, waiting by my car. "Why haven't you answered my calls or messages?" she asked. "I've had a lot on my mind," I replied. "Take me to dinner and then home," she said. "We need to talk." When I reminded her of my wife's remark, "What happens when people aren't home means nothing," Jenny nodded and looked at me. "Where is she today?" she asked. "In San Diego," I answered. "At least that's what she said." "Did you call her at work?" she pressed. "No," I admitted, feeling foolish. "Maybe you should have," she replied, "because I did." I looked at her for a moment. The following Friday, Debbie returned from her trip. First, she went to work, then came home. By that time, I had already made dinner and set the table. "Oh my God, honey," she said excitedly. "You really went all out." She rushed over to kiss me. It wasn't a passionate kiss, but the kind that married couples often exchange, even in public. I let her kiss me, and it was quick. No awkwardness lingered. In that moment, I thought this kiss and the warmth of her hand on mine might be our last. Trev and Jen are coming over for dinner, I said as I checked the stuffed peppers in the oven. Trev and Jen? She asked, surprised. Yes, they'll be here tonight. I could sense her unease. I thought you and I... She trailed off when she saw me turn and give her a polite, disarming smile. I guess I'll go change, she said, heading to the bedroom to take off her business suit. She'd attended her last meeting that morning in Omaha, then flew home and stopped by her office before returning. It was clear she had planned to take a shower, have dinner, and relax after a long, stressful week. I checked my phone one last time for any messages from Jen. One had arrived just 5 minutes ago. I heard the shower upstairs turn off. If all went as planned, Deb would be ready just in time for our guests. "They're on their way," I called up to her, but there was no response. I could guess why. Seeing them was the last thing she wanted. She came downstairs wearing jeans and a white t-shirt, the straps of her pink bra visible underneath. She had on flip-flops, the kind we both wore when we were relaxing at home. She smiled nervously at me and put a hand on my shoulder. "How can I help?" she asked. "I've got wine chilling in the fridge," I said, checking the stuffed peppers again. "Dinner will be ready in about 15 minutes. "It smells wonderful," she said. "What's in the pot?" "Orzo pasta," I replied. She looked sad as she nodded. It was the dish I had made for her on our last anniversary after we fell in love with Greek food on our European honeymoon. The memories made me sad, but this evening had to happen, and this was part of it. The table was set for 4, 2 on each side. She glanced at me briefly before taking a bottle of Zinfandel from the fridge, opening it, and inhaling its aroma. "Can I ask?" she started to say, but the doorbell rang. "I'll get it," I said, and left her in the kitchen. I whispered to myself, "It's showtime." I opened the door to our friends who were standing close by. Trev looked a bit uneasy, but Jenny gave me a knowing smile before leaning in and kissing me on the lips right in front of him. "Hello, Stallion," she said as she pulled away and walked past me. Trev didn't seem surprised by our public display of affection. "Hi, Trev," I said, smiling, though it wasn't a grin. "Come in, Carson," he replied, entering the house. Jenny and Debbie were already chatting in the kitchen when we joined them. For the first time in a long while, I noticed Trev scanning the room. His eyes moved from Jenny to Deb, and then to me. He looked like a man trying to piece together what was going on. "We're having a European-style dinner tonight," I announced. "Jenny's sitting with me, and Deb will sit with Trevi." Trevor and my wife exchanged quick glances before looking away when Jen giggled. "I think I like this. A European-themed evening, from the food to the seating." "What else do Europeans do?" she asked with a raised eyebrow. Trevor and Debbie remained silent as they sat next to each other, clearly uncomfortable, while Jen kept chatting away, being her usual self. Inside, I almost wanted to laugh. "Europeans share more than just seats at the table," I replied, grinning at Jen, who grinned back and laughed. "They swap spouses or have open marriages." "Interesting," Jen said. "What do you think of that, Trev?" He tensed up. "I wouldn't like it," he replied quickly. My wife flinched slightly and then looked away. "I don't know, Trev," Jen responded. "Maybe the Europeans are onto something." Once again, my wife and Trevor exchanged uneasy glances. As I served the food, I poured everyone a glass of wine without giving them the chance to decline. They'd need it soon enough. As we ate, Jen complimented the dish and how well it was prepared. Debbie and Trevor politely agreed, but it was clear they were on edge. "How was your trip, Trev?" I asked as we continued eating. Both he and my wife stopped mid-bite, almost in sync. It would have been funny if it weren't so sad. With every passing minute, the weight of realization grew heavier. The only thing that kept me calm was Jen's hand resting on my thigh, not in a sexual way, but as a soothing gesture. "Same as always," he replied. "Meeting clients, visiting our regional reps, then on to the next city." "What about you, Deb?" Jen asked. "Pretty much the same as Trev," she answered. "We both do similar work, just for different companies and clients." By now, they were both just picking at their food. It would have been almost humorous, but the situation was too grim. I refilled their wine glasses once we stopped eating, which really meant they'd lost their appetite. Jen and I collected the plates. Debbie offered to help, but I stopped her. "You and Trev just got back from a trip. Go relax in the living room. We'll join you in a few minutes." "Okay," she said, her smile forced and her eyes filled with worry. Trev looked like he wanted to say something to his wife, but she excused herself to the bathroom. I watched as they walked into the living room, exchanging nervous, questioning glances. They might have whispered to each other, but I couldn't hear it, though I could guess what they were worried about. When Jen came back, we joined them. "So, you two aren't interested in a European open marriage?" I teased with a grin. Jen joined in, laughing. Debbie and Trevor gave nervous laughs, treating it like a joke. "Too bad," Jen teased. "They're such prudes. Let me show you something I found this week. I think you'll like it," I said. "What is it, a chick flick?" Jen asked, pretending to be excited. "It has a little of both, masculine and feminine aspects," I replied, turning on the TV and pulling up a file I'd saved on my hard drive. The screen showed a sunny coastal city, then cut to a naval base as the camera followed a car pulling up behind a taxi at a hotel. Trevor hesitated, but Debbie recognized the hotel just before the video showed the two of them exiting the taxi, holding hands as they entered the building. By now, shock was written on their faces. The camera followed them as they checked in and walked to the elevator with their luggage, still holding hands. As the elevator doors closed, they leaned in for a kiss. "Carson, stop," Trevor said, but Jen cut him off sharply. "Shut up and watch," she commanded coldly. "Both of you." I glanced at my wife, whose face was now full of panic and shame. Her lips trembled as she tried to look away from the screen. The video shifted to a shot inside the hotel room, where Debbie and Trevor were both undressed, and she was kneeling in front of him. I couldn't help but think, you would cheat with someone like him? "Screw you, Carson," Trevor finally muttered, but Jen quickly shut him down with a slap and a glare. "You liked that, didn't you?" Trev asked. "Do you ever feel just as good with him sometimes?" My wife's expression changed. "I told you not to mention Carson when we were doing this," she said. "Why not?" "Feeling guilty?" Trevor shot back. "I just don't want to talk about him. You're liquidating the mood," she replied. After that, they lay down on the bed and the video went on for almost an hour. Eventually, they both took a nap. Deb was the first to wake, lying with her face turned away from Trevor. When he woke up, he reached for her, and she didn't resist as he rolled her onto her stomach. Jen, having seen the video before, looked at her husband with a cold, detached expression. He was angry, but resigned to seeing the evidence of his betrayal. My wife, on the other hand, had stopped watching and was quietly sobbing into her arms. The faucet turned off. Trevor glared at me while Jen came over and sat next to me. "Well," she said, "that was quite revealing, wasn't it?" Debbie finally looked at me and asked, "How did you find out?" That was all she said. I turned the screen back on, just as expected. Last week, when you and Jen were talking in our kitchen, I replayed the conversation between my wife and Jen. "Jen, it's true what they say about people who are away from their families on business trips. I wouldn't worry too much, Jen. Trev always comes back home to you, doesn't he?" "Yes, but I wonder what he does when he's alone." "If he is alone, Jen, don't focus on what happens when he's not there." "What do you mean, Deb?" "Exactly what I said. What happens outside the house means nothing." For added effect, I replayed the last line 3 times. "What happens outside the house means nothing." "That's what gave you away, Deb," I said. "It made me suspect you were cheating on me. I didn't know who it was with, but I realized you were allowing yourself to cross that line. I already had my doubts." Jen jumped in. "The way you two always managed to cross paths during your trips, how you sometimes avoided talking to each other, it all seemed suspicious." She turned to me. "It's funny how they were so guilty tonight, constantly checking on each other. Both of you were pathetic." "I hired investigators in all 4 cities you traveled to," I said. Deb winced, shaking her head as she sobbed again, realizing what was coming next. The next video showed Deb with another man at a bar, followed by them heading toward a hotel room. "Oh, you witch!" Trevor shouted at her. "Did you cheat on me too?" Jen and I couldn't help but laugh at his outburst and the desperation on both their faces. "But wait," I said sarcastically. "There's more." The video continued, now showing Trevor in a room in Las Vegas with a slender, muscular black woman. "My husband never does this for me," the woman said. "I'm glad to help," Trevor replied, as the woman wiped herself with a napkin. I couldn't hold back and clapped my hands at the absurdity. Debbie shook her head in disgust. "What a sight," Jen added. "Cheaters cheating on each other. Priceless footage." We all fell silent, each of us lost in our thoughts. Deb was the first to speak. "Carson," she said, her voice trembling, What's left for us? I turned and looked at her seriously. You know, Jen and I had a few days to talk and come to an understanding. We're both reasonable people. Neither of us are prudes. If either of you had brought up the idea of an open relationship, maybe we could have talked about it. Honestly, I even considered asking you, Deb, but you chose a different path, didn't you? You could have asked me openly so we could have made a decision together. Instead, you chose to be selfish, to do what you wanted behind my back. You lied and betrayed me, us. You betrayed our marriage. How am I supposed to forgive that? How can I move forward with someone who thinks it's okay to do whatever they want when I'm not around, and not just when you're traveling? How long has this been going on at home? I bet they already did, Jen said. I heard from people at his work that your wife took him out to lunch several times. Both Debbie and Trevor turned away, unable to face us. So what do you want? Trevor finally asked. Well, Jen said, it looks like we have everything we need. Neither of us has children, so we only have to deal with dividing the assets. And since infidelity matters in Texas, you're both screwed. Literally. Give me your phones. Both of you, I demanded. Unlock them. Deb winced, but handed hers over, unlocked. Trevor hesitated, but Jen walked over and snatched it from him. It's not even locked, she said, handing it to me. Give me a minute. I'll check his cloud account. It took a few minutes, during which I looked through Deb's phone. She hadn't written anything down, but her gallery showed pictures of Trev and another man. Nice, Deb, I said, shaking my head as she looked away. Here's how this is going to go. I can't trust you anymore. There have been too many lies for too long. While I was talking, Jen was calling out. Let's go, she said, glancing at what was happening. You both work for companies that have moral standards. Have you forgotten that? I saw a look of panic on their faces. Both your bosses and their legal teams would be extremely disappointed with your behavior. One of them is a skirt chaser himself, but after his company had to pay for one of his indiscretions, he now lets his HR and legal departments go after those who break the rules. This must be your boss, Trevor. Damn, he muttered. That's why you got into trouble, idiot, Jen told him. I gave you everything you ever wanted in bed. I shared all of myself with you and never held back, unless I was sick. You betrayed me, Trevor. It's over between us. Well, not yet. What do you mean? Well, I chimed in, divorces are inevitable, and both of you will sign papers giving us 70% of the assets. If you fight us, your videos will be shared with your families, friends, and employers. Carson, Debbie looked at me with pleading eyes. Please don't. Maybe we can figure this out. Seriously, Deb, I grinned. If you saw a video of me having sex with Jen behind your back, would you try to work it out? Please give me a chance, she begged. I did, Deb. I snapped. You and I were in trouble before you left on your stupid tour, and you went ahead and did it anyway. You decided to start taking the pills without discussing it with me. We are married. We agreed to live together and make decisions together. You betrayed my trust. Even before you cheated on me with him or anyone else, you lost respect for me, so this was easy for you. I just want to know one thing. Why? She looked away and then back at me. Before you, I had no experience communicating with other men. One guy finished in less than a minute. Carson, that was my experience before you. I wanted to try others and see what it was like. I stared at her in disbelief. You should have thought about that before marrying me, I replied. This is when people explore, not after they tie the knot. Marriage isn't just a commitment. It's a contract between two people. It means it's just the two of them against the world, and that marriage is exclusive until both agree otherwise. Well, you knew about leaving everyone else behind. She wanted to respond, but paused, then spoke again. Carson, I wanted to go out and have fun before the wedding, but you showed up, and I didn't want to risk losing you. The first few years were great between us, but this past year everything resurfaced. I started to wonder what other men might be like. It wasn't love. That's why I had you, just for sex. That's all I wanted. I shook my head in disappointment. All you had to do was ask me, Deb. All you needed to do was talk to me at home. We could have found people we trusted. Damn it, I would have let you sleep with that guy if we all agreed since we were friends. Instead, you two went behind our backs and violated my trust. Debbie, with trust and love comes respect. You lost all respect for me by sneaking around. We could have figured this out together, but you chose to act without me. Jen nodded in agreement. That goes for you too, Trev, she said, especially after we talked. I was taken aback as Trevor looked away, and Debbie stared at Jen and Trevor in shock. "Did you do this?" Debbie asked. "What did he say?" "That prick told me he would never share me with Carson and that he would leave me if I brought it up again or he caught me." "Can you believe it?" Debbie shook her head at Trevor and then pushed him away, punching him. "You stupid idiot," she said as he tried to shield himself from her second and third blows. "When we started, I said we should bring them along, didn't I? But you insisted we couldn't do that and that they would abandon us. I listened to you. Now look where we are. You've turned into a strumpet, Deb." "It didn't take long," Trevor said angrily. "And after me, you started looking for others. So don't act innocent. I remember our first kiss at Christmas last year. You let me kiss you for a minute or two while Jen was in the bathroom and Carson went out to the car. It took less than a week to get you into bed." I remembered that night. Everything seemed so perfect. We were celebrating with our best friends, and while his wife and I were out of sight, he and my wife were kissing. "I screwing hate you," she shot back at him. "It's screwing mutual," he replied. Jen and I watched them glare at each other for a few minutes, filled with contempt and distrust. Was there any hope left? It looked hopeless. Too many lies and too much betrayal had occurred. If we had kids or were older, I might have wavered and thought about it. But I was young, and there were no children tying us together. I wanted to leave. The doorbell rang again. This time, Jen answered it. She returned with a woman carrying 2 bags and a smartphone. "Deborah Madison Canick?" she asked my wife, who nodded. "You have been served." The woman handed her an envelope and took a photo. "Trevor Gunderson?" she asked, looking at Trev, who nodded reluctantly. "You have been served." Debbie was now openly sobbing, clutching the papers. Jen turned to me and shrugged before approaching her husband. "It's all over between us. Go home, pack your things, and leave. I never want to see you again, understand? If you say anything, the video goes to your parents, your workplace, and anyone you call a friend. Got it?" Deb didn't move, but then turned to me and did something unexpected. She knelt down and crawled over to Jen and me. "I beg you both, please forgive me and give me another chance. I know I messed up. It's all my fault. Do whatever you want with me. Just don't throw me out onto the street. Carson, please, Jen, talk to him. I'm begging you both." Debbie looked into my eyes, pleading. I realized this was my test as a man. Yes, I loved her. No matter how betrayed I felt, I still loved her. But what she did was unforgivable. Still, throwing her out like that felt wrong. But I would never trust her again. "Jen is moving here and into my bedroom," I said, locking eyes with her. I saw her wince. "I understand," she choked out, fighting back tears. "I deserve it. I need to talk to her about you. Is that clear?" The door closed as Trevor left and Jen returned. "What are you going to do with her?" she asked. "You know she can't be trusted, right?" "I know," I replied. "I'm not going to." Debbie looked at us in despair. "Please," was all she said. "Shut up," Jen replied, pushing her back to the floor. Debbie lay there for a second or two, then got back on her knees. "Carson, please don't divorce me." "Get your things and go, Debbie," I told her. "Pack for at least a week, and we'll discuss how you can get the rest later." When she nodded and began to cry again, her face reflected sadness and reluctant acceptance. She slowly got up and went to the bedroom to gather her belongings. 40 minutes later, she had packed 2 suitcases, a travel bag, a laptop case, and a purse. Jen and I watched her load everything into her car, standing side by side as she drove off for the last time. She reached out to me, but I pulled away. She sobbed again and left in tears. "Everything went better than we thought," Jen said, leaning closer to me. "They brought this on themselves," I added as we watched my soon-to-be ex-wife's car disappear into the distance. "Every spouse has the opportunity to cheat. Not everyone takes it." "Funny," Jen said, returning to me. "What's so funny?" I asked as she began to undress. "Some people think they have an open marriage, but they forget to inform their spouse about it." "Do you want an open relationship?" she asked as I pulled away. "That feels too much like dating others," I replied. "Do you need it?" "I just need something different every now and then, Carson. It's been a while since I've had any variety, and sometimes I may need a change," I answered. "We agree," she said, breathless. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. Jen and I both received the 70% we had requested. Jen sold her house, and I took out a loan to pay Debbie 30% of the house. In one day in court, all financial and legal issues were settled, but not Debbie's pain and guilt. She lost everything except her job. Her parents eventually found out when she started preparing them for the possibility that I might send them videos and photos out of spite. I never did that. Trevor simply vanished after his divorce from Jen was finalized. She had enough money to buy him out, but the last thing he told her was that he would be in touch. It's been 2 years, and we haven't heard a word from him. Debbie still works and travels. What she does doesn't matter to me anymore. The other day, Jen and I were at a cafe when Debbie walked by, focused on her phone. Jen and I live together, but we both fear serious commitment. It's been a year since my divorce, and my memories of Debbie are fading. Jen and I are discussing traveling around the world. Recently, I received a letter. "Hello, Carson. I hope you are doing well. I'm trying to live my new life, but to be honest, it's not easy. I miss our time together. I miss you and us. I've had so much time to think about what I did to you, to me, and to us. I ruined everything by believing I deserved to have everything I wanted, regardless of the consequences. In my pursuit of sexual exploration, self-indulgence, and self-fulfillment, I hurt the man I loved and lost my marriage. Not to mention, I helped destroy Jenny and Trevor's marriage. It would be easy to blame him for what happened, but we both know that's not true. Everything I did was my choice. No one forced me. I owe you an apology, Carson. Not just for ruining our marriage and our life together, but also for, as you pointed out, losing respect for you. But before that, I lost respect for myself. I fell for the belief that I deserved the pleasure and experiences I thought I had missed out on. Now, I have the experience of divorce behind me that I never expected. Nothing about it brings me satisfaction or comfort. It's torn me apart. I heard that you and Jen are still together. I wish you both happiness. But to say I'm not jealous would be a lie. Take care of yourself and Jen, your unfortunately ex-wife. With love, Debbie. P.S. Loneliness sucks. What happens outside the home means a lot. I folded the letter and set it aside, staring blankly at the table. Debbie's words echoed in my mind. She admits it, but it doesn't change anything. It's been too long, and what's broken cannot be repaired. Jen noticed my silence and walked over. "What's wrong?" she asked. I slid the letter toward her. She glanced at it, quickly skimming the contents. "Debbie?" she asked, and I nodded. "She's still stuck in the past," I replied. Even now, she doesn't fully grasp that what she did was more than just selfish pleasure-seeking. It shattered everything. Jen gave me a sad smile and sat down next to me. Some people never learn until they lose everything. We sat in silence for a few moments, the weight of the past still lingering between us. Eventually, Jen spoke up. "We're doing better, though, aren't we?" I nodded. "Yeah, we are. We weren't perfect, but we had each other, and that was enough for now." Debbie's letter reminded me of everything we'd gone through, but it also reaffirmed that we had made the right choices, painful as they were. There was no going back, and I was okay with that. As Jen rested her head on my shoulder, I felt a sense of closure wash over me. The letter was the final thread of my old life being severed. We would move forward, leaving behind the tangled web of lies and betrayal that had ensnared us all. The future, while uncertain, felt a little brighter. "Let's plan that trip around the world," I said quietly. Jen looked up at me with a smile. "I thought you'd never ask." The weeks following my divorce were a strange mixture of relief and confusion. It was as though I had stepped out of one life and into another, yet my mind couldn't fully disconnect from the old world. The echo of Debbie's words in that letter, her regret, her sense of loss, kept pulling at me, even though I knew nothing she said could change what had happened. You can't undo betrayal, and no apology, however heartfelt, erases the wounds left behind. I had learned that the hard way, but there was a kind of peace in finality, too. The knowledge that this chapter of my life had truly ended allowed me to breathe a little deeper, sleep a little sounder. I had spent so long caught up in the web of doubt and distrust that I didn't realize how exhausting it had been, living with the constant weight of uncertainty. Now, at least, I had clarity. I knew what had happened. I had made my decisions, and the path ahead was mine to choose. Jen was by my side, through it all. We both knew that our relationship had been born out of pain, out of the broken pieces of our previous marriages, and neither of us tried to deny the complexity of that. But, in a way, it made us more honest with each other. We had seen the worst of what relationships could be: deception, betrayal, lies. And neither of us had the energy for more of that. So we were raw with each other, sometimes uncomfortably so, but it felt like the only way forward. It wasn't long before we started talking seriously about that trip we had mentioned. Traveling the world sounded like the perfect escape, the perfect way to leave behind the wreckage of our old lives and embrace something new. I hadn't realized how much I needed that. Something that didn't remind me of Debbie, of Trev, or of the countless lies that had torn our marriages apart. We sold what we didn't need, packed light, and booked our flights. First stop, Europe. Jen had been before, but for me it was new ground, and I was excited. I wanted to see it all, the narrow streets of old towns, the rolling hills, the vineyards. More than that, I wanted to experience life in a way that felt untainted, unburdened by the ghosts of my past. Jen felt the same. We were both tired of looking over our shoulders, tired of second-guessing every conversation, every glance. Our first weeks in Europe were blissful. We traveled from city to city, Paris, Florence, Santorini, taking in the sights, savoring the food, enjoying the simplicity of being together. There were no expectations between us, no demands. We were just two people trying to live in the present, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't thinking about what had been or what might have been. I was simply living, yet in the quiet moments when Jen would fall asleep next to me in some quaint little hotel, I couldn't help but think back to Houston, the city that had been home, the city where it all unraveled. Debbie's letter had brought it all back, the good times, the laughter we had shared, the plans we had made for our future. It was hard not to feel a pang of sadness when I thought about how it had all ended. But that sadness was different now. It wasn't the gut-wrenching grief that had consumed me in the beginning. Now, it was more like a distant ache, a reminder of something that had once mattered but no longer did. One night in a small seaside town in Greece, Jen and I sat on a terrace overlooking the sea, the moon casting silver light across the water. We hadn't spoken for a while, each lost in our thoughts. Finally, Jen broke the silence. "Do you ever think about her?" she asked, her voice quiet, almost hesitant. I didn't need to ask who she meant. "Sometimes," I admitted. "Not in the same way I used to, though." Jen nodded, tracing the rim of her wineglass with her finger. "I get that. I think about Trev, too, but it feels distant now, like it happened to someone else." "Yeah," I agreed. "It's strange, isn't it? How something that was once your whole life can just fade." Jen smiled softly. "Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that means we're healing." I thought about that for a moment, then nodded. "Yeah, maybe it does." We sat in silence for a while longer, watching the waves crash against the shore. The weight of the past didn't feel as heavy anymore. It was still there, but it wasn't suffocating me. I could breathe. As the weeks turned into months, Jen and I continued our travels, moving through Europe and beyond. We visited ancient ruins, hiked through mountains, and wandered through cities where no one knew our names or our stories. It was freeing, being somewhere where the past didn't follow us. We were just two people, exploring the world together, and that was enough. But even as we moved forward, I couldn't help but think about Debbie's letter from time to time. There was something in her words that lingered, her admission that in her quest for freedom, for sexual experimentation, she had lost the very things that truly mattered. It was a lesson she had learned too late, and while I couldn't forgive her for what she had done, I could at least understand the emptiness she must have felt. It didn't excuse her actions, but it made them make a little more sense. As we stood on a cliff in Santorini, looking out at the vast expanse of the Aegean Sea, I felt a sense of closure. The letter had been the final chapter, the last tie to the life I had left behind. Debbie had made her choices, and I had made mine. There was no going back, no repairing what had been broken, but that was okay. Not everything could be fixed, and not every story had a happy ending. Some just ended. Jen turned to me, her eyes bright with excitement. "So what's next?" she asked, a smile playing on her lips. I smiled back. "Wherever we want to go," I said. "The world's wide open." And it was. For the first time in a long time, I felt like my life was mine again, like the future was something to look forward to rather than something to fear. The pain, the betrayal, the heartache, they were all part of my story, but they didn't define me. I was moving forward, and that was all that mattered. Jen reached for my hand, and together we walked down the cliffside path. The world spread out before us, full of possibilities. We had left Houston behind. We had left the lies and the betrayals behind. Now, it was just us, carving out a new path, one step at a time. And as the sun set behind us, casting a golden glow across the horizon, I realized that I was ready for whatever came next. ready to live, ready to love, and ready to finally let go of the past. Because sometimes the only way to truly move forward is to leave behind what no longer serves you. And that's exactly what we were doing. Before I found myself staring out the bus window at the familiar streets of Oakland, my life was a whirlwind of duty and distance. The Air Force had taken me across the globe, giving me 4 years of unforgettable experiences, but also leaving a trail of separation from the people I held dearest. It wasn't easy juggling the weight of responsibility and the ache of longing, but I told myself it was all for a greater purpose, a future I believed in. My wife, Susie, was my anchor, or so I thought. We'd built a life together before the deployments began, but with each passing mission, I noticed the cracks forming. Letters turned to brief phone calls, and the warmth in her voice started to fade. It was hard to pinpoint exactly when, but I sensed we were drifting apart. The love we once shared seemed buried under the layers of time and space. Yet, as the bus sped through the California countryside, I held on to hope that coming home would be the start of something new for us, a chance to rebuild what had crumbled. As the bus glided past the entrance to Auckland Zoo, the realization hit me. I was almost home. After enduring a grueling 5-hour journey, the end was finally in sight. Just a short drive more, and I'd be in Oakland, ready to drop my bags and embrace the comfort of familiar walls. Most importantly, I would see Susie again, my wife, after half a year apart. The thought of reuniting stirred a mixture of excitement and unease within me. I'm Joe Thomas, a 27-year-old Air Force senior airman. Until recently, I was on active duty, completing a 4-year stint as a fighter avionics technician, essentially maintaining aircraft electronics. I just wrapped up my third 6-month overseas deployment, this time at Ramstein Air Base in Germany. After landing at Edwards Air Force Base earlier today, I opted for a bus ride across the California countryside to decompress and think about my future now that my service is over. My father, Bill, ran a family electrical business in Oakland for years. After high school, my twin brother John and I interned with him. Once I earned my electrician qualifications, I joined the Air Force while John stayed to help our parents. Though I have an open offer to return to the business, I'm not sure I want to. Working in ceilings and dealing with difficult customers doesn't appeal to me. I'd rather try something new, but it would be nice to see Mom, Dad, Susie, and John regularly again. Susie and I met during my internship and married a year after I joined the Air Force. Lately, our relationship hasn't been what I hoped. Before my deployment, we started drifting apart, and the separation didn't help. After 5 years together and 3 years married, maybe the spark has faded. I want to figure out how to revive it. Susie, originally from the Midwest, moved to the Bay Area for a business degree, and now essentially runs our family's electrical business. While my mom is the official manager, Susie handles finances, logistics, and inventory, keeping everything running smoothly. I suspect she took the job mainly to stay close to family while I was away, though it's not hers by blood. I'm not sure how she'll feel about me not rejoining the business. After hopping off the bus a few blocks from home, I walked the rest of the way, arriving at 4 p.m. Since Susie was supposed to pick me up from Fairfield at 7 p.m. after my planned stop at Travis Air Force Base, I didn't know if she'd be home yet. Fortunately, an early arrival at Edwards gave me time to catch a bus straight across California. When I walked into the house, everything looked just as it had 6 months ago. I headed to the bedroom to drop my bag and noticed the bed was a mess, with sheets on the floor. The sound of running water came from the shower. Susie must be home. "Are you getting ready to pick me up?" I called out. Startled, she shrieked. "Oh my God, you scared me. What are you doing home already?" "I got dropped off early," I replied. "I'll be out soon, okay?" she said quickly. "I was thinking of joining you. I've been on the road for nearly 24 hours, I added. Her tone was firm. "I'll finish up quickly, and you can shower after." Her reaction wasn't what I had hoped for. No hug, no excitement. It stung. I left the bathroom, grabbed my laundry, and started the washer. When I returned to the living room, Susie walked in, wearing a bathrobe and a towel wrapped around her hair. "So, you're really done with the Air Force? They didn't make you re-enlist?" she asked. "They tried, but no, I'm done," I replied. "Can they still call you back?" "Only if there's a war, and even then, not for the next 4 years." She nodded and walked to the bedroom. I went to the kitchen for a glass of water, feeling disappointed. This wasn't the homecoming I'd imagined. No joy, no warmth. She acted as if I'd been gone for a day, not 6 months. I followed her to the bedroom and watched as she hurriedly cleaned up. "Are you just going to stand there, or will you help me?" she asked, not looking up. "I'm not here to tidy up." "Why does the room look like a tornado hit it? Have you been sleeping poorly? And during the day, too?" I questioned. She paused and looked at me. "I was late for work this morning. I came home early to get ready for your return." "And you're still not happy to see me?" I pressed. She didn't respond and continued making the bed. Frustrated, I walked back to the living room and sat on the couch. I didn't think she was cheating, but her indifference was unsettling. Our relationship had felt distant even before I left for Germany, and now her coldness made it worse. I lay down on the couch and drifted off. Sometime later, I heard her voice. "Joe, dinner will be ready soon. Go take a shower." Her voice woke me. It was already dark outside. I must have slept for hours. I got up, went to the bathroom, and stepped into the hot shower. The warmth washed over me, making me feel refreshed and calm, at least for the moment. When I returned to the dining room, Susie had set the table and plated porterhouse steaks with mashed potatoes, my favorite. "Smells amazing," I said as I sat down. She smiled. "Welcome home, Joe." "Thanks," I replied, cutting into the steak. "We've got ice cream for dessert, too," she added, sitting across from me. As I savored the meal, I glanced at her. "Why didn't you call me from Fairfield? I could have picked you up." "I didn't land at Travis. I flew into Edwards this morning and took a bus home. I thought you'd still be at work," I explained. "Did you stop at your mom and dad's first?" she asked. "No," I said, shaking my head. "I came straight home to see my loving wife." Her expression softened, but she looked apologetic. "Sorry for the lukewarm welcome. I had plans for tonight, but you caught me off guard." "That's okay," I said with a shrug. "We've got time to catch up." Susie ate quietly after that, rarely looking up. She seemed distracted, lost in her thoughts. I broke the silence. "Do you still enjoy working with my family?" "Now that I'm back, you don't have to stay there if you don't want to." She looked up briefly. "I like it. If I didn't, I'd tell you." "I'm fine with it," I said reassuringly. "I just thought you were working there to stay close to them while I was gone. Now that I'm back, it's your choice." "Your mom's great to work with," she replied. "And Dad and John, they still treating you well?" I asked. "Of course," she said, nodding. "Your dad relies on Betty and me, and John's as nice as ever. The guys respect me because they know I'm in charge." We finished eating and moved to the living room for ice cream. Susie sat in a chair instead of next to me on the couch, and I couldn't shake the feeling she was avoiding me. After she finished her ice cream, she picked up the remote. "Susie," I said gently, "could you turn off the TV and come sit with me?" She hesitated for a moment, but eventually joined me on the couch. She perched on the edge, distant. I pulled her closer, but when I leaned in to kiss her, she turned her head and hugged me instead. It felt hollow, like hugging a sibling. I pulled back and looked at her. "What's going on, Susie?" Her eyes darted away. "What do you mean?" "Come on," I said, my voice firm but not harsh. "I've been gone 6 months and you haven't kissed me once. You're avoiding me." "What's changed?" She looked away. "I just need time to adjust to you being home." "That's not true. You never needed time before. Are you seeing someone else?" When Susie glared at me and stormed off to the bedroom, I thought she'd speak, but instead slammed the door behind her. "Where are you going? You can't even answer a simple question," I called after her. I took a few deep breaths and followed her, only to find the door locked. "Susie, can you open the door so we can talk?" Silence was her only response. Frustrated, I went back to the living room, lay on the couch, and turned on the news to distract myself. Thoughts swirled. Was she mad because I questioned her or because I'd hit the mark? Morning light woke me. I stretched and headed to the kitchen for coffee. As I walked toward the bedroom to ask Susie if she wanted some, I noticed the door was open, but she wasn't there. Her car was gone. Had she already left for work? Checking my phone, I realized it was nearly 8 a.m. Late for me. After brewing coffee, I decided to eat before heading to my parents' business. In the garage, my dusty truck wouldn't start. The battery was dead. I pushed it to the slope road, jump-started it, and made a mental note to visit the garage for a checkup. After having breakfast at a diner near my parents' store, I arrived at Thomas Electrical. As I headed toward the back of the store, a young employee behind the counter stopped me. "Sorry, sir. Staff only," he said firmly. "I'm Joe Thomas, Bill's son," I replied. Recognition dawned on his face. "You're the Air Force guy? They're all here," he said, stepping aside to let me pass. In the storeroom, I immediately noticed my brother John and Susie at the far end. They were talking closely, their conversation appearing intimate. John occasionally stroked her arm, and at one point they hugged. It looked like he was trying to comfort her. I pushed the scene out of my mind and entered the office, where Mom greeted me with a warm hug. "It's so good to see you, honey," she said, beaming. "Is it true you're done with the Air Force?" "Yep, no more deployments," I confirmed. "How are you holding up? Keeping everyone in line?" she teased. I chuckled. "Your dad's still his own boss, and you're just like him," she added with a laugh. Before I could respond, Dad appeared, surprising me with a rare hug. "Welcome home, son. Good to see you," he said gruffly. "Good to be back, Dad," I replied sincerely. "How was Germany?" he asked. "Still exciting, or did it get old?" "It was good," I admitted, "but I missed home." Dad nodded. "So, what's next? Any chance you'll re-enlist?" "No regrets so far," I said thoughtfully. "But I need time to figure things out." "You've got a job here whenever you want it," Dad said. "Don't pressure him," Mom chimed in. "He doesn't have to work here." "It's his business too, not just John's," Dad countered. This argument seemed to reflect an old disagreement between them. I hadn't told anyone my plans, so their discussion caught me off guard. "It's fine," I said. "We can talk about my plans later. I'm just happy to be home." John and Susie entered the office then. "Good to see you, Joe," John said, giving me a quick hug. "Hey, big brother," I replied. "Found yourself a nice girl yet?" John gave an awkward laugh. He'd always struggled with girls, relying on me to help him meet their friends back in high school. Since I started dating Susie, his personal life seemed to fizzle out. Unlike me, John was more reserved and hesitant to try new things. "So, are you re-enlisting in the Air Force or coming back to work here?" John asked. "Neither. I'm thinking of doing something else," I replied. John nodded, but Dad cut in. "What's your plan for today, Joe?" "Nothing yet. Why?" "Come with me. I could use a hand and we can catch up," he said. "Sure, Dad. Give me 10 minutes to get ready, and I'll meet you at the loading dock." As Dad left, John followed him out, leaving Susie sitting silently at her desk. I realized she hadn't spoken to me all morning, not since our argument last night. I walked over to her. "Are we going to talk, or are you just ignoring me?" I asked quietly. "I don't think there's anything to say," she responded, her tone cold. "There's plenty to say, you just don't want to talk," I said, keeping my voice low but firm. She shot me a sharp look. "Not until you apologize." "I'll apologize if you explain why you've been so distant since I got back. You've spoken more warmly to John than to me. Do you even want to stay married?" I asked, my frustration boiling over. Susie's face hardened. "Just because I don't jump into bed with you doesn't mean I'm cheating. But you won't even show affection. Why?" I pressed. "I told you, I need time to readjust," she snapped. "Readjust to what? What's going on?" I demanded. "Nothing," she said curtly. "Bill's waiting for you, and I have work to do. Please go." Fuming, I left and found Dad at the loading dock, loading tools into the truck. "You ready, Joe?" he asked. "Yeah, let's go," I replied. At the job site, a gutted house, Dad and I got to work, him on the light fixtures and me on the outlets. After a couple of hours, we took a break in the truck. "Here, take half my sandwich," Dad offered, handing it to me. "Thanks," I said, taking a bite. We ate in silence until I finally spoke up. "Mom mentioned this morning that you and she had talked about me not working here. What's that about?" Dad sighed, his eyes focused on the dashboard. "Your mom thinks John will do better if you don't come back. She wants to give him space to succeed." "She thinks I'm holding him back?" I asked, my voice rising. "She thinks he's happy now. She believes this is his chance for a good job, a family, a stable life," Dad said carefully. "And me working here would ruin that?" I asked bitterly. Dad shook his head. "I don't agree with her, but she's convinced." I clenched my fists. "She's always favored John, but this is next level. What's going on?" Dad hesitated, then cursed under his breath. "Crap. You don't know, do you?" "Know what? What are you talking about?" I demanded. He avoided my eyes, finally saying, "Susie and John, they've been together since you left for Germany. She told us you two broke up before you deployed." "What?" I barked. "That's a lie. We never broke up." Dad exhaled heavily. The coldness from Susie. "It all makes sense now. Your mom and I didn't know at first. She was upset, but Susie told us you knew. Eventually, your mom accepted it." "Accepted it? So they tried to hide it from me?" "Not exactly," Dad said. "Susie claimed you knew. We all thought you were okay with it." "John knew damn well I had no idea," I growled. "And this morning he hugged me like nothing happened." I sat in silence. the betrayal from my wife and brother sinking in. Dad stayed quiet, the air in the truck heavy with tension. Finally, I broke the silence. So you and Mom knew John was with my wife while I was overseas, and you were okay with it? No, I wasn't okay with it, Dad said, his voice low. Your mom was upset at first too, but she eventually accepted it. They tried to keep it a secret. Does everyone at the store know? I asked, my voice tight with anger. Yes, Dad admitted reluctantly. I clenched my fists tighter. Unbelievable, and John acts like nothing happened, even hugging me this morning. Dad sighed. Susie told us you two broke up before you left for Germany. She and John were already close, and we thought they got together because they were lonely. Close? I snapped. That means John's been after my wife for a while. I can't believe he'd do this to me. I think he's always been jealous of you, Dad said quietly. Jealous? Mom wants me gone so John can have my wife, the business, and everything else. Should I hand him my house and truck too? I spat bitterly. Your mom didn't know she'd been lied to, Dad said. She thought you left Susie. She wanted them to be happy, but it wasn't right. John is dead to me, I spat. Come on, Joe. He's still your brother, Dad said. I know you're angry, but Susie's just as much to blame. No, John's my brother. If anyone should have my back, it's him. And Susie? She acted like I owed her an apology last night. I'm sorry, Joe, Dad said quietly. This is a mess. I looked at him sharply. What will you say to them when you get back to the store? Nothing, Dad admitted. I gave them a hard time when I found out, but I thought you knew. They should have at least waited until you were divorced. I took a deep breath to calm myself. The betrayal burned and memories of my arrival home twisted in my mind. I finally replied, I need time to think about this, but I won't ruin my life over them. They're not worth it. Dad nodded. Call me later so I know you're okay. Sure, Pa. I headed to the store to grab my things. When I walked into the office, Mom looked up. Done already? She asked. No, Dad's still there. I came back to talk to my cheating wife and my traitor brother, I said coldly. Mom's face paled. What are you talking about? You two aren't together anymore. No, Mom, that's the lie they told you. Susie and I never split. They've been lying to you and Dad. I turned to Susie. How could you do this to me, with my own brother? Susie said nothing, running out of the office. I looked at Mom. So, is this what you wanted, Mom? To get rid of me so John can have it all? I didn't know, Joe. I thought you and Susie broke up, Mom said weakly. You could have asked me when I called, but you stayed quiet, protecting them. Well, now you know you can't trust them, I said bitterly before walking out. As I exited, John approached me. Step back, John. Don't make this worse, I warned. You need to leave, Joe. This isn't your place anymore, John said defiantly. I confronted John, and in the heat of the moment, a scuffle broke out, leaving him on the ground with a bloodied nose. You're dead to me, John. Don't come near me. Susie better have her stuff out of my house by tonight, I said coldly. I stepped over him, left the store, and drove off. It's been 3 months since I learned about Susie and John. She moved in with him, and I sold the house. It held too many painful memories. After paying off the mortgage, I rented an apartment near the South San Francisco airport and landed a job with a major aviation support firm. The work was challenging, but my fighter experience prepared me, and I finally felt like I was moving forward. Mom and Dad visited once I settled in. While Mom and I made peace, she had scaled back Susie's role in the family business. On a Friday night, co-workers invited me out for dinner and drinks in South City, and I gladly joined. After dinner, we headed to a bar. On my way back from the restroom, I accidentally bumped into someone. Sorry about that, I said, stepping back. No problem, the woman replied, turning toward me. I froze. Maddie, wow, it's been years. Joe, she exclaimed, her face lighting up as she gave me a brief hug. Maddie had been my first love, and the first girl John had tried to steal from me back in high school. You look amazing. Do you live nearby? I asked, still surprised to see her. I'm in San Bruno near the airport. What about you? She asked with a curious smile. I'm here in South City, I said. I work in avionics. What about you? I run a travel agency near the airport, Maddie replied proudly. We spent a few moments catching up. She mentioned hearing that I'd gotten married, and I admitted that I was now separated. How about you? I asked, grinning. There's no way you're single. Actually, I am, Maddie said, catching me off guard. Old memories and feelings began to stir. You're here with friends, right? I asked, glancing around the room. Yes, she said. What about you? My coworkers, I replied, then gestured toward the table. Want to join us? Sure, let's merge our tables, Maddie said, grinning. We returned to our groups. My team, Mike, Jay, Brian, and Teddy, was eager when I mentioned Maddie's friends. Let's do this, Mike said, already eyeing the table of women. As we joined Maddie's group, I made it clear, Maddie's the blonde with the bob. She's mine. You guys pick from the other two. Deal, Mike said, laughing as we grabbed chairs and moved closer to the women. Hey, Maddie, I said, smiling as we settled in. Hi, Joe. Help me bring the tables together, she said, her smile sparking a renewed sense of excitement. As we joined the tables, Maddie introduced everyone. I'm Maddie, and these are Bethany and Kira. Hi, I'm Joe. These are Jay, Mike, Brian, and our boss, Teddy, I said. So, how do you know Joe? Bethany asked Maddie. He was my first crush. We were high school sweethearts, Maddie replied. Bethany and Kira sighed in unison. So, you're not married to Joe? Kira asked with a teasing smile. No, and don't even think about matchmaking us, Maddie said with a grin. Looks like you messed up, bro, Jay joked, smirking at me. Yeah, I did, I admitted. I turned to Maddie, who leaned in and whispered, Are you just saying that, or did you finally realize I was right about John? Lowering my voice, I said, I figured it out recently. John was the reason my marriage fell apart. I regret not believing you back then. Maddie smiled slyly. Well, you can always make it up to me. I really want to, I said sincerely. She gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, drawing chuckles from the table. Whoa, Maddie, what did Joe say to earn that so fast? Bethany asked, amused. I don't kiss and tell, Maddie replied. But Joe's always been the nicest guy I've ever met. Really? Was he your first too? Kira asked, grinning. Kira, that's a bit personal, Maddie said, laughing. What about you, Joe? Was Maddie your first? Kira pressed, nudging me. Yes, and the best, I said confidently, earning cheers and backslaps from the guys. Is it getting warm in here? Bethany teased, fanning herself. Okay, enough about us, Maddie said, redirecting. Which of you guys are single? These ladies need entertainment. That would be Jay and Mike. Good luck, guys, Teddy said with a laugh. The next hour or two flew by as we all relaxed and enjoyed ourselves. Jay and Mike seemed to really hit it off with Bethany and Kira, and even Teddy and Brian were having a good time. As for me, I couldn't get enough of Maddie. She was just as captivating as I remembered, and it felt so natural being around her again. At some point, I excused myself to use the restroom. When I came out, I noticed Maddie walking toward the same hallway. She smiled when she saw me and leaned casually against the wall next to me after she exited. It's so good to see you again, Joe. I mean it, she said softly, her eyes warm. Same here, I replied, meeting her gaze. I'd forgotten how much I enjoy spending time with you, just being with you. She smiled faintly. I know. Maybe it's like they say about your first true love. You form a bond that stays with you for life. Maybe, I said, my voice lowering. But I'd like to put that theory to the test. Damn it, Joe, you're really smooth, Maddie said with a mischievous smile. You could start by giving me your number and taking me out to dinner. What if I want to start by kissing you first? I asked, leaning in slightly. Maddie giggled and gave me a playful look. Okay, Joe, we can start with that. I leaned in and kissed her, softly at first. It felt even better than I remembered. Maddie's hand moved to my face while her other arm wrapped around my back. I pulled her closer, letting the moment linger, savoring the warmth and softness of her lips. It felt like time had stopped. When we finally broke the kiss, Maddie looked up at me, her cheeks slightly flushed. Wow, that was really good. You've still got it, Maddie, I said, grinning. She laughed softly, still catching her breath. Pretty sure that's all you, Joe. But we should get back to the table before I lose control of myself. Do we have to? I teased. If it were up to me, I'd take you home right now. Easy, Tiger, Maddie said with a cheeky laugh. You can take me out to dinner first. I'm not that kind of girl. I chuckled. Fair enough. But can I get one more kiss before the night's over? She smiled, her eyes twinkling. Yes, you can, I promise. We went back to join the others, and I couldn't stop humming, replaying that kiss with Maddie in my mind. We chatted for another hour before heading to the dance floor, pairing off. Jay danced with Bethany, Mike with Kira, and Teddy had already left to go home to his wife and kids. Brian followed soon after, leaving just the three couples. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, I was slow dancing with Maddie when she said, Joe, the girls and I are heading home after this song. You'd better call me. That's one thing you'll never have to worry about, I replied with a smile. I can't wait to see you again, and you haven't even left yet. Maddie rested her head on my chest, and we danced slowly until the song ended. Walking back to the table, we found Jay and Bethany already seated, with Mike and Kira close behind. The night felt surreal. 3 couples forming in one night. Was that even possible? Eventually, we all went outside to wait for a cab, each couple lost in their own conversations. The first cab pulled up for the girls. Maddie gave me a quick kiss and reminded me, "Call me," before hopping into the car with Bethany and Kira. Left standing with Jay and Mike, Jay turned to me and said, "Joe, I owe you for this. Bethany is amazing. We already have another date." Mike added, "Same here. Kira actually asked me out. I was too nervous in case she said no." "Glad I could help, guys," I said. Tonight was amazing, better than I ever hoped. The next morning, I woke up feeling slightly groggy, but not too bad. Maddie was on my mind from the moment I opened my eyes. After showering and getting dressed, I headed to a coffee shop near my apartment for some coffee and waffles. As I sat there, thinking about her, my phone rang. "Hello?" I answered, glancing at the unknown number. "Hey, Joe," Maddie's familiar voice came through the line. "I just realized I never gave you my number last night. I just got yours, so save mine, okay?" "Of course I'll save it," I said quickly. "Honestly, I was just thinking about you." "No, wait, that's a lie. I've been thinking about you all morning." Maddie laughed warmly. "Well, now I'm thinking about you too." "Really, Joe, are you in love with me already?" "If we were in Salem in the 1600s, I'd accuse you of being a witch for putting a love spell on me," I teased. "Oh my God," she giggled. "Did you rehearse that line?" "Did you like it?" I asked, grinning. "Yeah, I liked it," she admitted. "Well," I said playfully, "if I'm under your spell, does that mean you can make me do whatever you want?" "Absolutely," Maddie replied. "Then I order you to pick me up and take me to lunch today," I said, flipping the script. "Deal," she said without hesitation. "Send me your address, and I'll be there." "I will." "And Maddie?" "Yes?" "Thanks for last night. I haven't felt this happy in a long time." "I feel the same way," I said sincerely. "It's like I've hit a reset button on my life. A new place, a new job, new friends, and hopefully someone special to share it with." Maddie laughed lightly. "If I find out who she is, I'll scratch her eyes out." "What?" I chuckled, caught off guard. "Well, we're not rookies at this," she said, her tone softening. "But I hope we can make it special this time." "I hope so too," I agreed. "Okay, my waffles are getting cold. Don't forget to send me your address." "I'll send it now. See you soon, Joe." "Bye, Maddie," I said, ending the call with a smile. When I got to Maddie's house, finding a parking spot was impossible. Luckily, I saw her coming out of the building, so I honked and waved. She hopped into my freshly cleaned pickup. I'd spent 2 hours making it spotless for her. "So, where are you taking me for lunch, Joe?" she asked, leaning over to kiss my cheek. "How about Pedro Point? We can grab some food on the way and sit by the ocean. It's a bit of a hike, though." "Sounds perfect," Maddie said, her face lighting up. As we walked down the path toward the observation deck, I held Maddie's hand. She glanced up at me with a soft smile. When we reached the end of the trail, we sat on the grass, the Pacific Ocean stretching out endlessly before us. After a moment of quiet, I opened my backpack and pulled out the sandwiches we'd picked up earlier. "I thought you'd take me to a nice restaurant or cafe," Maddie said with a playful grin. "But this is so much better." "I'm glad you think so," I replied. I wanted it to be something memorable. Eating out doesn't always feel special. Maddie leaned her head on my shoulder, her voice softening. "You're making me nervous, Joe." "What do you mean?" I asked, looking down at her. "Well," she began, "just yesterday I had no idea where you were or what you were doing. Now, it's hard to imagine not being with you. This is happening so fast. I don't want to get hurt again." I hesitated, then said, "I'm sorry for how things ended between us back then." "I should have believed you." "No, that's not it," she cut me off, shaking her head. "I was hurt by my marriage. I only started moving on a few months ago, and now I'm here with you. With you, Joe, I can't do casual. It's all or nothing, and that scares me." "What scares you?" I asked gently. "Falling in love again? Or remembering how much it hurts when love goes wrong?" "Both," Maddie said, her voice trembling. "Doesn't it scare you, knowing what it's like when love hurts?" "I know the feeling," I admitted, "but I'm not going to let it stop me. My relationship with my ex-wife doesn't define us. You're nothing like her. What we have is different." Maddie looked at me, her expression cautious. What about your ex? Are you going to say I remind you of her? No, not at all, I said firmly. If anything, I always wished she were more like you, or at least the version of you I remember. Her brow furrowed slightly. But what if I'm not what you remember? What if I turn out to be more like her than you'd like? I took a deep breath. Well, I don't know your ex, but I do know myself. In my head, I'm still that high school kid who had a crush on you. Sure, I've got a few more scars and stories, some good, some bad, but I'm still me. I want to live a wonderful life, and I want to share it with someone I love. Maddie's expression softened. Okay, she said quietly, but if you hurt me again, there won't be a third chance. I held her gaze. I won't need a third chance. I promise. Maddie lifted her head and we shared a gentle kiss. After lunch, we went back to her apartment to hang out, or more accurately, make out. I didn't push for more. Maddie had already said she was nervous about how fast things were moving, so I decided to let her set the pace. That Saturday night, Maddie planned to see a movie with Bethany. It turned into a double date with Maddie and me, plus Bethany and Jay. I didn't stay over that night. Instead, I had dinner with my parents on Sunday, making sure John and Susie wouldn't be there. Over the following week, I took Maddie out to dinner twice. On Friday night, we all went out again, 3 couples this time. Around 10 p.m., Maddie leaned over to me at the table. Joe, can you take me home? She asked. Are you okay? Is something wrong? I asked, concerned. No, nothing's wrong, just the opposite. I want you to take me home, she said softly. I looked into her eyes and raised my eyebrows. Are you sure? I asked. Yes, I'm sure, she confirmed. Maddie kissed me softly on the lips. We stood and I announced to the group, we're heading out. They seemed to understand and didn't object. When we got back to her place, she led me into the living room. Have a seat on the couch, Joe. I'll be right out, she said. Do you want something to drink, Maddie? I offered. No, I'm fine. Help yourself if you want, she replied. I considered it, but decided against more whiskey, opting for water instead. I was just getting comfortable on the couch when Maddie came out of her bedroom. She was wearing something special and invited me to join her. That night, we made love. Afterward, Maddie looked into my eyes. I can't believe I'm already so in love with you. You know that, right? She asked. I love you too, Maddie. I really do, I replied. In the weeks that followed, Maddie and I were inseparable. Outside of work, I often spent nights at her apartment since it was closer to our jobs. I even started keeping work clothes and a toothbrush at her place for convenience. It was incredible how quickly we fell into a rhythm, as though we were finally finding our missing halves. In the year we dated in high school, we knew each other well, but now, with more life experience, we were discovering ourselves and each other on a much deeper level. It was Tuesday night. We had just returned to Maddie's apartment after dinner, and I was sitting on the couch waiting for her to come back. I couldn't stop thinking about how happy I felt just being around her. Maddie reappeared, wearing an oversized t-shirt that looked like a dress, and snuggled up to me on the couch. Joe, I've been thinking, she said. You don't have to if you don't want to, I teased. Maddie smiled but pressed forward. Shouldn't we talk about what happened in our marriages? Just so we can understand how we got here? To what end? I asked. To figure out what went wrong? Yeah, and maybe to make sure we don't repeat the same mistakes, she replied thoughtfully. All right, do you want to go first or should I asked. You go ahead, Maddie said with a small smile. But I have a feeling your story might be longer than mine. Fair enough. Where should I start? I asked. How about how you met her and what she was like, not how you see her now, but back then, Maddie suggested. Well, I began. We met at a bar. I was in college and she was studying business at Mills. We were both 21. She seemed nice, but wasn't very talkative at first. I had to work hard to get her to open up and have a few drinks. Honestly, I don't remember thinking she was the one or anything. We just gradually started dating. I joined the Air Force after my internship, proposed 6 months later, and we got married another 6 months after that. Being in the service wasn't easy on our relationship, especially since she stayed behind. She had a job in the city and lived in the house we'd just bought in Oakland, a small 3-bedroom. We ended up spending more time apart than together. What was she like? Maddie asked. And what were you two like as a couple? She was determined, sometimes too stubborn for her own good. She wasn't great at expressing her feelings and often bottled them up, even with me. But when she was in a good mood, she could be warm and cheerful. I felt like it was my responsibility to get her into the right mood, And sometimes I just couldn't focus on it, especially when I was overseas. Ironically, the distance sometimes helped because we missed each other. When I came home, things would be good for about a month. She felt lonely when I wasn't around, so I convinced my parents to hire her at the family business. That way, she'd have support, and it was easier for her. Plus, we needed 2 incomes for the mortgage, so her staying abroad with me wasn't an option. Maybe renting out the house and traveling together could have been a solution, but we never considered it. When did she start working for your parents? Maddie asked. During my 3rd year in the Air Force, about a year and a half after we got married, I explained. Were you around much after that? Is that when things started going wrong? Maddie pressed. Yeah, I wasn't home much. I was in Germany for most of my 3rd year and the last 6 months of my final year. The 6 months in between, I was stationed at Edwards with a test squadron and only came home on weekends. Is that when she started getting close to John? Maddie asked cautiously. Yes, I think so, I admitted. They always got along fine, but I didn't suspect anything while I was at Edwards. Looking back, I think her relationship with John may have contributed to our problems. Do you think she thought she could trade you for someone who'd be around more? Maddie asked, her voice careful. She knew my time in the Air Force was ending, and I never planned to re-enlist. But she started dating John during my last 6 months. Maybe she just fell in love with him. He can be persuasive. But that didn't work on you, did it? Maddie asked, her eyes narrowing slightly. No, I said firmly. I wouldn't betray you even when I was away. And as for John, he tried to make a move on me once, but I shut it down. I was disgusted, but I didn't confront him because I didn't want to escalate things. Why not? He's your brother, Maddie pressed. He was drunk, and at first I thought he was just being an idiot, but then things got out of hand. Maddie's expression hardened. You said he kept groping you. What exactly did he do? He'd come up behind me, grab my chest, and wrap his arms around me so I couldn't get away. Even when I yelled at him to stop, people thought we were just messing around. Everyone else was partying, so they didn't think it was serious. I was furious you weren't there because he wouldn't have tried that if you were around. I was mad at myself, too, for not leaving sooner, but I didn't want him ruining my night. I'm sorry I wasn't there, Maddie said softly. What happened next? He cornered me in the hallway as I came out of the bathroom and tried to push me into a bedroom. Well, you know the rest. I've never felt so powerless, and no one tried to help me. Maybe they thought I was okay with it because they'd seen us hanging out together before. Like I was just fooling around with him while you were away. Well, Maddie said, her voice hardening, I'm glad you stood up for yourself. I hope his balls are still sore. Her bluntness caught me off guard, and I laughed despite myself. I don't think he'll ever forget, I said, my voice darkening. Maddie sighed and rested her head on my shoulder. So what about your story? I asked after a moment of silence. Maddie hesitated before nodding. All right, she said softly. I met my ex, Simon, when we were sophomores in college. We started dating and got engaged about a year after graduating. We married 2 years later. You dated for years before getting engaged, and then it took even longer to get married, I said, puzzled. Why did it take so long for you two to connect? I'm not sure, Maddie admitted. Looking back, maybe we both knew deep down it wasn't meant to be. We were probably just content with what we had at the time. But you loved him, didn't you? I asked gently. Yes, Maddie said quietly, at first, but like your relationship, we drifted apart as time went on. I think we ended up getting married to try to save what we had. There was also pressure from family and friends. The marriage only lasted about 6 months. What went wrong? Did you decide to end it? I asked. No, Simon lost his job and hated the new one he found. He started drinking more and eventually he became violent, Maddie admitted. Violent? Did he touch you? I asked, my voice tight with concern. At first it was just verbal misuse, but then he started pushing and kicking me. That's when I decided I had to leave, she said. And? I prompted gently. And one night, after he came home drunk and angry, he punched me during an argument. I don't even remember what it was about, but it was like I was the target for all his frustrations. I told him to sleep on the couch that night, but the next morning he started in on me again and strike me again. That was the last straw. Did you go to the police? I asked, my fists clenching instinctively. Men like that usually keep doing it. There needs to be a record so future women are warned. Yes, I went to the police. I got a restraining order and he was forced to move out. I haven't seen him since that day, Maddie said. I'm sorry you went through that, I said sincerely. With both Simon and John. I hope the other guys you dated treated you better. You're my only boyfriend, and so far you've been good to me, Maddie replied with a soft smile. Wait, you didn't date anyone else in college after you met Simon? There must have been plenty of guys chasing after you, I said, surprised. There were, but I was still thinking about you. I didn't want to date anyone then, so I focused on my studies and spent time with my girlfriends. They eventually convinced me to start dating the next year, but I got teased a lot for being so serious, Maddie said, laughing. Madeline's mother was a favorite, she added playfully. I laughed, and Maddie smacked me with a pillow. Tell me, Joe, she said, her tone serious again. Do you think you'll ever forgive John for what happened? He is your twin brother after all. No, I said firmly. I don't think I ever will. Even putting aside what he did with Susie or you, it's about what he did to me. He betrayed my trust. I've thought about it a lot since Susie left. Even though he's my twin, we were never good friends. Maybe if we were identical twins, it'd be different, but we weren't alike at all. He was always around, but I never enjoyed being alone with him. We were only together because of other people, my friends, my girlfriends. Looking back, I realize I never liked him. If he weren't my brother, we wouldn't have been friends. What's that saying, Joe? You can choose your friends, but not your family? Maddie asked gently. Yeah, but it's tough when your family becomes part of your friend group. Mom and Dad expected me to take him everywhere, like he'd always have my back. I don't know why he didn't just do his own thing or make his own friends. That's one reason I joined the Air Force, to finally get some space from him. Well, now you're rid of him, Maddie said kindly. Let's go to bed, Joe. I need to snuggle for a while. Wait, I said, stopping her. You said we should talk about this so we can learn from it. What exactly did we learn? Not to fall in love with crappy people, Maddie replied with a smirk. I laughed. Yeah, I guess we learned to make better choices about the people we love. That, and that you should never settle for second best, Maddie said, her tone softening. Agreed, I said, standing up and pulling her into a hug. Now I'll take my first best girlfriend to bed. Maddie kissed me softly before leading me into the bedroom. The following weeks went by much like the ones before, but now it felt hard to imagine what life had been like without Maddie. I felt so at peace, as though this was what it truly meant to be happy and in love. Last weekend, Maddie joined me for lunch at my parents' house. Mom and Dad were thrilled to see her again and relieved to see me happy after splitting from Susie. By the end of the week, I had moved all my things into Maddie's apartment. Since we were already practically living together, keeping two places didn't make sense. It had been just under 6 months since I filed for divorce from Susie. Maddie's divorce had been finalized about 8 months after she filed, so hopefully I only had a few months left before it was official. Mom turned 50 on Thursday, but she threw a big party Saturday evening at my parents' house. Over 60 friends and family attended, making it hard to avoid John and Susie without upsetting Mom. Skipping the party would have let them control my relationship with my parents, so Maddie and I decided to go. We arrived around 4 p.m. The house was already crowded, and the party was set up in the backyard under a large gazebo. As we made our way through, greeting relatives, Mom appeared from the kitchen. She stopped, beamed, and pulled us into a hug. You two look like you belong in a daytime TV romance, she exclaimed. Absolutely gorgeous. You look amazing too, Mom, I said, smiling. Not a day over 40. Stop it, Joe, she laughed. Is this how you won Maddie over? Maddie chuckled. He's smooth, Betty, but he's also genuine. That's his dad in him. Bill was always a sweet talker, Mom said. Happy birthday, Betty, Maddie said warmly. Happy birthday, Mom, I added, handing her our gift. Hope this is a party you'll never forget. Thank you, she said, hugging us again. Then, hesitating, she added, Joe, John, and Susie are here. Is that a problem? Not from us, I assured her. It's your night. Enjoy it. Determined not to let them ruin the evening, we headed to the backyard where Dad greeted us. You both look amazing, he said, shaking my hand and kissing Maddie on the cheek. Maddie, how my son convinced you to fall for him is beyond me. Laughing, Maddie replied, He's quite charming. Must take after you. Smart and handsome. You've done well, Joe, Dad said proudly. Mom looks great for her big day, I said, steering the conversation back. She seems happy. She's been stressing for weeks, Dad confided. Hopefully she can relax now. I hope so too, I agreed. Lowering his voice, Dad added, Joe, your brother and Susie are here. Is that okay? As long as they stay away from us, I said calmly. I'll make sure they do, Dad promised. Thanks, Dad, I said, feeling more at ease. We mingled with the crowd, mostly family and friends of my parents. Some I knew well, others just vaguely, but everyone seemed to recognize me. My height and build made me hard to miss. Maddie, however, was the star of the evening, with guests constantly gushing over how stunning she looked. At one point, she went into the kitchen to help Mom bring out food, and I noticed Susie following her. I smirked to myself. Susie has no clue who she's messing with if she's going after Maddie. A few minutes later, Susie came out of the house looking upset. She went straight to John, and I could see them arguing before Susie stormed off to sit far from him. Not long after, Maddie appeared, carrying a tray alongside Mom and one of my aunts. She caught my eye, flashing a mischievous smile. God, I love that woman. After setting the food down, Maddie joined me, looking smug. She leaned in close. "You've been up to something, haven't you?" I teased quietly. "You have no idea," she replied with a grin. "But I'll fill you in later." "Not even a hint?" I asked. "Just enjoy watching Susie and John squirm all night," she said, laughing softly. I smiled and kissed her gently. "The moment my divorce is final, I'm marrying you." She raised an eyebrow, smirking. "You planning to ask me first?" "I will," I promised. "On one knee and everything. I might even sing for you." "Let's skip the singing," she teased, laughing. "But I'm looking forward to it." For the rest of the night, Susie and John barely spoke. When they did, Susie's scowl made it clear things weren't going well. Later, when I went inside to use the bathroom, I found John lingering awkwardly in the hallway. The moment he saw me, he stepped aside, avoiding eye contact. I gave him a quick, dismissive glance as I walked past, and that was the extent of our interaction. After the party, I drove Maddie back to our apartment. She was grinning the entire ride home. As soon as we stepped inside, I couldn't hold back. "All right, spill it. What did you say to Susie at the party?" Maddie leaned against the counter, smirking. "So I went to help your mom with the food, but she left for the bathroom, leaving me alone. That's when Susie walked in, started loading a tray, and said, 'So, you're Joe's new girlfriend. I'm his wife, Susie.'" "She really said that?" I asked, stunned. "Oh, absolutely," Maddie said with mock sweetness. But I didn't let her rattle me. I looked her in the eye and said, "Soon-to-be ex-wife, actually, and I'm not just Joe's new girlfriend. I'm Maddie, his first girlfriend, the first girl he loved, and soon-to-be his wife." I laughed. "What did she say to that?" "She froze, totally caught off guard," Maddie said, grinning. "Then she tried. Joe already broke up with you once. What makes you think he won't do it again?" "So," I shot back, "Joe didn't break up with me. I left him because he didn't believe me when I warned him your dear John was after me. And we both know John has a thing for taking everything Joe has. Friends, girlfriends, even his wife." I stared at her, amazed. "You said that?" "Oh, I wasn't done," Maddie replied. "I added, John knows how to get what he wants, but he didn't get me. I'd never stoop that low. You, on the other hand, better keep an eye on him. Guys like that don't handle rejection well, especially when they're drunk or angry." I was speechless. No wonder she looked so upset when she came out. "She didn't know what to say," Maddie said with a shrug. "She just stared at me, then walked out. A few minutes later, she and John were arguing." "Do you think she's realizing who John really is?" I asked. Maddie nodded. "She's not dumb. Judging by how they acted the rest of the night, she's already regretting her choices." I exhaled, shaking my head. "That explains why she avoided him all night. You were right. John was probably manipulating her the whole time." Maddie rested her head on my chest. "John was different when you weren't around. Your presence kept him in check. Without you, his true nature came out." I frowned. "Why didn't anyone tell me this before?" "Tell you that your twin brother is a manipulative idiot who resents you?" Maddie tilted her head. "He was always around, so no one could. And honestly, I was scared you wouldn't believe me. Until that party, I was right. You didn't." "Yeah," I admitted, regret creeping in. "I can't believe I fell for his lies. I was so gullible." "You're not gullible, Joe. You're a good man who sees the best in people," Maddie said firmly. "Don't let him change that." I pulled her close, holding her tightly. "Thank you," I murmured. She smiled, kissing me softly. "Story's over. Let's go to bed." "Wait," I said, stopping her. "What else are you hiding? There's something, isn't there?" Maddie smirked. "Want to guess?" I grinned. "That I'm the best lover you've ever had?" "Obviously, but no," she teased, laughing. "That you can't wait to marry me again?" I joked. "Yes, but still not it." I studied her, narrowing my eyes. You're pregnant, aren't you? Her face lit up. Yes. I kissed her slowly, savoring the moment. How far along? Not far, she admitted. I just confirmed it with the doctor this week. You're not upset we didn't talk about this first? She asked hesitantly. It happened while I was switching birth control. No, Maddie, I'm thrilled. I can't wait to marry you, buy a house, and have 4 kids, I said, laughing. 4? She gasped, mock horrified. I need to keep my figure, you know. You'll be the prettiest mom in the PTA, I teased. The slimmest MILF in the Bay Area. You say the nicest things, she said, smiling warmly. I love you, Maddie, I said, holding her close. I love you too, Joe, she replied. My divorce was finalized 2 months later, and Maddie and I married 2 weeks after that. We kept it small, just family and close friends. Bethany and Kira were her bridesmaids, while Jay and Mike stood as my best men. We bought a house in San Bruno that needed renovations, but with help from my dad and coworkers, we fixed it up quickly. Life moved fast, but everything felt right. Maddie and I had finally found the life we were always meant to have. 6 months after Maddie and I married, our son Mason was born. Holding him for the first time was overwhelming, and watching Maddie with him was even more moving. She was a natural, loving, patient, and gentle. Mason became the center of our world, and life felt complete. Now, Maddie is expecting again, a girl. The scans show she's healthy, and we're already planning her arrival. Mom and Dad are thrilled about another grandchild. They've fully embraced their roles as grandparents, though they're slowing down with the family business. John and Susie are no longer part of it. Susie left John a few months after my remarriage. She got a restraining order and moved back to the Midwest to be with her family. Mom and Dad told me she finally saw John for who he was, manipulative, controlling, and eventually violent. After she left, they forced him out of the family business. He's now a silent partner like me and works for another contractor in San Jose. I rarely think about him anymore. Maddie was right all along. She saw the truth before anyone else, and I've come to trust her instincts completely. She's not just my wife, she's my anchor. Last weekend, we took Mason to my parents for lunch. It was one of those rare, peaceful afternoons. Mom and Dad played with Mason in the backyard while Maddie and I sat on the porch watching them. I can't believe how everything turned out, I said, holding her hand. Your dad was right, Maddie said with a smile. It all worked out for the best. I kissed her hand and leaned back, savoring the moment. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and it was good. Looking at our little family, I knew we had everything we needed. Maddie rested her head on my shoulder. Do you think she'll have your eyes? She asked about our baby girl. I hope she has yours, I replied, smiling. Maddie laughed softly. I hope she gets your patience, and maybe your optimism. And maybe your stubbornness, I teased. She rolled her eyes. You'll never let that go, will you? Never, I said, pulling her close. I love you, Maddie. I love you too, Joe, she replied warmly. Watching my parents play with Mason and holding Maddie's hand, I knew this was everything I'd ever wanted. Maddie would always be the love of my life,